Hello, everybody. Welcome to another stream by Eddie Gonzalez, the Sounding Off podcast. We're going to start using that name more often now.
Yes, sir.
Hey, do that. And me, InfoWars Press. So you're officially on the geopolitics channels now. Those of you who are still listening on Moscow Photographer and American in Crimea, this is almost your last chance to hear us on those channels. So make sure you pop over to the new ones and subscribe, click on the bell so you get notifications.
In fact, let me go ahead and, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this live stream. And second of all, I wanted to announce that March 23rd, I believe it's Sunday the 23rd, don't quote me on that, but anyway, not this Sunday, next Sunday, will be the last time the Sounding Off podcast will be dual streamed on Moscow Photographer and the Sounding Off podcast channel. So take this opportunity, go here, right there, and subscribe so that you can get notifications and you can watch the lives there because they will no longer be on Moscow Photographer channel. So,
and since Eddie has put a date on it, do the same over here because you won't find it on American in Crimea after that either. So, Dingbat, hello, Christopher, Murat, Odious, hey. See, you ended up right in the end, Odious. It definitely wasn't on the 13th, it's on the 14th, so we just made you right on that one. So, Rosie, G-Man, Country Gal.
If I could make a quick little announcement, because on our Sunday night podcast, I had promised that we would have a live stream last night, Thursday night, with an American family that had moved to American villages here in Russia. Well, because of technical issues, they couldn't get internet installed in their home in time. So it's been rescheduled for a later date, but it is coming.
Yeah, actually, that's what I was giving Odious a hard time about because I had announced that stream. And I told him it was on the 13th at 2100, and he told me that I had the date and time wrong, and turns out he was right.
Mm-hmm. He was.
Hey, Michael. Hey, Jill. Hey, Edelwolf. So, cool stuff. You know, I've been planning to do a stream on this on my channel for about 3 days now, but it just moves so quickly. Emily, hello. But I think we actually get a day, maybe two, of a little bit more calm. So we had Russians and Americans meeting in Saudi Arabia, about a week and a half ago? Mm-hmm. And what we're told they talked about was improving relations between the two countries, not about the conflict with Ukraine. Sorry. Then we had Ukraine meeting with the United States and Saudi Arabia, and they actually talked about a ceasefire agreement. And it was interesting because Ukraine went into it with their giant list of demands, and they came out of it after Trump cut off military aid and military supplies to them, with them agreeing to what the United States proposed, which was a 30-day ceasefire and of everything, air, ground, sea, the whole shebang. Then they threw the ball into Russia's court and said, okay, guys, agree with it or you'll look bad. And gee, Eddie, um, we told people to be careful not to speculate too much and not count on anything too much. And what do you think?
You know, it's all, anytime there's breaking news or whatever, it's almost, well, the first response to any of it is emotion. It's not logic, it's not well thought out, it's definitely emotion. And if you want to find out the substance of whatever has happened, you need to sit it out about 24 hours in that news cycle and see what kind of cooks within that first 24 hours. And that's exactly what happened, because everybody came out and started saying, well, Putin agrees. Putin agrees. Putin agrees. We heard it reported. It was interesting because on X, the pro-Russian channels were saying Putin agrees, and I hate it. The the pro the pro-Ukraine channels and the EU and all this were saying Putin agrees, we got him. And I was thinking, no, you don't. Both of y'all are wrong. I don't know how and to what degree, but you're both wrong. And sure enough, 24 hours later, we discover Putin's actual words. And what he said, if you listen to the words, is, we agree with the sentiment that there should be peace. We agree with that idea. We agree with the direction that this needs to go. However, caveat, comma, there are some nuances. There are nuances to it.
Sorry. Yeah, and it's interesting to what you were saying, even, well, late our last night, early yesterday morning, before the official statements were published on what Putin said in his official interview that he made these statements with Lukashenko, Western press was already publishing and out on the news saying Putin disagreed and he is going to continue the war and he's against peace and Trump has applied sanctions. Well, actually, Trump did not apply sanctions after the meeting in Moscow yesterday. The sanctions people are talking about not renewing the license for SWIFT to be used by certain Russian banks for energy purchases wasn't renewed back on the 12th. So it's a similar thing to what Rosie's asking about here, lifting the funding to Ukraine before the meeting. That was a power play by the United States. That was the United States playing a card and saying, we aren't giving you any more support if you don't agree with us on this agreement. And of course, Ukraine folded. You look at the thumbnail, Ukraine was holding the Joker. So they did the same thing with Russia. They said, we're not going to renew this license, so nobody can settle purchases of Russian gas and oil on the SWIFT exchange with the Russian banks. And this was a pressure tactic. It didn't work. So, who holds the cards?
Well, whose court is the ball in now?
Well, I think the ball is back in the United States' court.
And go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, because I have two analogies for this.
Well, I was just about to say that I think the ball is in Zelensky's court now. And I've got some statements that will back that up. But I will toss the ball back to you, and let's hear your analogies.
Okay. Emily, what's good for me? Lots of things are good for me. Lots of things are bad. I find the things that are bad for me taste the best. So, yes, country gal, the aid started right after Ukraine agreed to the ceasefire. And then the United States refused to renew the license for the gas and oil before the meeting in Moscow. And no, the Swiss stuff not being restored, that's not necessarily good for me. Anyway, so I have two analogies here because I've heard so much about, I saw it just this morning. Somebody in one of the channels, one of the American in Russia channels, made the statement of, good, Putin should nuke them and, destroy the whole country and everything else. Why should Russia agree to a ceasefire? So what people don't understand is that, and this is a little bit of what Putin was talking about, the nuances in negotiations. When you look at it, you had the tell me what's wrong with this picture, Eddie. You had the United States and Ukraine and Saudi Arabia talking about what the terms of a ceasefire agreement would be. They were the only two at the table. And then they threw that over to Russia and said, now sign it. What do you see wrong with that in a negotiation?
Well, that's the same thing they did with Ukraine when US and Russia met and didn't include Ukraine at the table. And they said, here, sign this. Of course, it was for something different, but the analogy is the same. You need to have all three parties at the table. And I can throw in another little nuance to this as well, is that the U.S. signaled or positioned itself as negotiator between Russia and Ukraine. However, they made statements that said, if Russia does not comply with our peace plan, then we are going to immediately rearm and resupply Ukraine. Well, wait a minute. I thought you were the middleman. I thought you were the negotiator. I thought you were the mediator. Yeah. You're not mediating this. You're party to it. And not only that, is what people need to realize is that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has already acknowledged that the U.S. is fighting a proxy war with Russia. That means they are party to it. In other words, they're taking the responsibility of it, saying, yes, we're in this and we want to get out. But how can you negotiate as a mediator when you're party to it? So kind of confusing.
So Max, America is not a natural negotiator. That is absolutely correct. Trump is. Trump is a businessman and he's treating his government like a business. So there's some nuances in this. Like Eddie said, it's hard for them to really be neutral in this. So we can't consider them a mediator. And this is the first analogy I was going to go for. This is like if you're going to go out and buy a house and you hire a realtor to negotiate for you. Now, they make you sign a paper saying that they don't represent either party and they're neutral, but they always prefer the person that's paying them than the person who's not paying them. So you've hired a broker, essentially, and you say, I'm looking for this house and I want these features. And he comes to you and he says, okay, I've talked to these different people and here's the options I have to show you. And, you're missing this and this one, you're missing this and this one, you're missing this and this one. And you say, nope, this is an absolute must. So then they go, okay, and they go find that. And then there's things you don't like about it. But what do? That broker goes back to the selling party when you decide on one that almost meets your needs. And he says, look, these people are interested in your house, but it's missing this, this, and this. You're asking this much, they're offering you this much money. And the seller of that house goes, well, I'm not willing to sell it for that. I might sell it for this, but I'm not going to meet these conditions. So then the broker goes back to the people buying and says, well, this is what the seller said. And you always got 3, 4, 5, 7 days to make your mind up on these things. And they say, okay, well, now they said this. So, and this broker tries to get people to give a little on each side, going back and forth, but he's always preferring the guy who hired him. So if it's the selling broker, it's the seller that has the advantage there. If it's the buying broker, it's the buying one. Or if they have 2 brokers involved, one on each side, they talk to each other. But this is a single-sided broker situation. So I just wanted to relate that to something that people in the West might be able to relate to, this back and forth. Mm-hmm. So we had the broker talking to Ukraine, came up with an agreement, threw it over to Putin. Russia said, yeah, we like the idea for the most part, but, we don't like the price. So now they've tossed it back and they've said, this is our price. And should we show them the price, Eddie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's start with the video. It's the short version of the video because it's in English. I've got a longer version that's in Russian with subtitles, but I couldn't find it in English. So here's Putin's response in English, and listen for the nuance in it.
With the propositions to stop hostilities, but we proceed from the fact that such ceasefire should be such that would lead to a permanent peace and remove the original causes of the crisis.
So this is Putin saying he agrees to sell the house, but he doesn't agree with the price and the terms. And if you want the whole video, you can find it on my Telegram channel here. And it's in Russian, but it has English subtitles on it. And you can get all the nuances. Essentially, this is the terms that Russia has put on it. They agree to stop the hostilities, but there's questions. Who will basically assure that these hostilities will stop? Who's going to give the orders? And we've got a bunch of Ukrainian guys trapped in Kursk right now. Last number I heard was something like 10,000 Ukrainians can't get out. And Russia has said they can either surrender or die. And, Putin's asking. He says, well, who's going to give, is Kiev going to give them an order to surrender or not? So he's thrown the ball into Ukraine's court there, saying, well, order your guys to surrender and we'll let them live. Because didn't you have Trump's statement about that? No, that was his other statement.
Well, that's another statement, but...
Yeah, so Trump made the statement that, Putin, please allow these men to live. And Putin said, tell Kiev to order them to surrender and they will live, they will be treated well. If they don't, they will die. So, we also have the issue of who's going to patrol this 2,000 kilometer, almost 1,000 miles of front line to make sure nobody is breaking the ceasefire and to determine who is breaking it if it is broken. So, this is the problem. Russia's asking serious questions. Basically, Putin gave Trump, Ukraine, and the European Union a masterclass in saying no.
You know, I'm looking at this document you have on the screen from March 13th.
Yep.
And I think one of the most significant lines in this is bullet point number 2, which says, "It is unclear who will give orders to stop hostilities in Ukraine and what the price of these orders will be." If you really, really think about what that statement means, is we all know Zelensky doesn't call these shots.
Yep.
That's exactly what it's saying. So it's either EU, UK, maybe it's France, maybe it's US, maybe it's deep state, maybe it's, we don't know. It's unclear who will give these orders to stop the hostilities. I think that is a very clear statement that we know Zelensky doesn't hold the cards.
Yeah. And the other one is where they threw the ball into Trump's court, which is, if you really are looking for peace, then you have to guarantee us that you aren't going to keep supplying Ukraine with weapons, you and Europe, and letting them, build their military up. So if you're really, truly heading towards peace, so this is all the nuances in this you guys really need to look for.
And to that, there was a well, you go ahead. Let me look for it first. That might take me a while to find it.
Okay, what should we put up? Should we put up Trump's statement?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, we had a very good, productive discussions. That doesn't mean Trump and Putin. It means the contingent from the United States that was in Moscow. And, they're still positive that the conflict can be ended. But there's a bunch of troops surrounded, and he strongly requested that their lives be spared. This is what I was talking to a minute ago. So, Trump is still positive. This means there's actual negotiations still going on. They took the first round in. Russia's come back and said, we're open to it, but you have to give us these guarantees around these questions, or at least give us answers. And, so now it's going to be up to the United States to go back to Ukraine again.
Here's something very interesting first of all, we haven't talked about. I haven't heard or seen many people mention this, but yesterday, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte was in Washington meeting with Trump. And afterward, in fact, just today, he confirmed that NATO membership for Ukraine is off the table. Talk about a pivot. Talk about a pivot for NATO. That right there.
Yeah. Even after Saudi Arabia, that was a red line for Zelensky, is we still demand NATO membership. So they've pulled another thing off of their table. Odious, technically you are correct. They are not surrounded in Kursk. However, the one road that they have that they can evacuate out of, they have been essentially killing everybody who goes down it. So if you look at the videos that are out there coming from the troops up in that area, the Russian troops, they're actually destroying anything that goes down that evacuation route. Nobody is living through that. Only where they've got 2 or 3 guys at a time sneaking through the fields sometimes get out. So technically you're correct. They are not surrounded, but Russia has full active fire and drone coverage over the entire area. So where do you want to go from there, Eddie?
Well, I'll go back to my first assertion that the ball is now in Zelensky's court, because um, President Putin has made some statements, and I'm going to read them off here because I don't have them on here, but these were released from RIA Novosti. This is RIA Novosti's Telegram channel, and they said, I'm just going to read it, and then we'll discuss it. Putin said that he had read Trump's call to spare Ukrainian soldiers in the Kursk region. The Russian president stated that he understood that the U.S. president's call was guided by principles of humanity in relation to the Ukrainian military. Ukraine military personnel in Kursk region will be guaranteed life and decent treatment if they lay down their arms and surrender, Putin said.
Yep.
To effectively implement Trump's call, Ukraine's leadership needs an order for its military to lay down their arms and surrender. That's the punt to Ukraine. Medvedev, not to be left out, called Russia's approach to the Ukrainian armed forces in the Kursk region, outlined by Putin at a meeting with members of the Security Council, humane. Medvedev stressed that if Ukrainian militants refuse to lay down their arms, they will be consistently and mercilessly destroyed. One more comment. Trump's signal has been heard. Putin has guaranteed the lives of decent treatment of the Ukrainian armed forces militants in the Kursk region, if, of course, Kyiv orders them to lay down their arms and surrender. So the ball is it's actually in multiple courts. It's in the huddle in Kyiv or wherever their command post is. That's where the ball is. And whoever's in this huddle, probably representatives of EU, UK, US, whatever, and they're all trying to figure out how they're going to do this. Now, here's a question, a big question. Or not a question, but what an if. What if Ukraine abandons those soldiers out there? I mean, let's be frank. They abandoned their wounded. They abandoned their casualties on the battlefield. What if they just say, the heck with it, and they leave them out there? What would Russia do at that time? What would America do? I mean, you talk about a humanitarian play going wrong.
Yep.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Well, I don't know. You're playing devil's advocate with the devil here, so
That's
I don't
exactly. And the thing is, we don't know what's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of Kiev and their huddle today or tomorrow or tonight, whenever, about this. But
yeah,
without resupply, these guys that are out there in the Ukrainian armed forces that are there in Kursk, they're not getting food. They're not getting resupplied. They're not getting ammo. They're not getting fuel. And like I said, they're not getting food either. So they're just stuck. They're just stuck because if they move, they're going to be taken down. So it's kind of critical. And like I said, from a humane point of view, I totally get it. But it's up. Kyiv has not only the ball in their court, they have an opportunity to look humane, to look better than how they've looked in the past.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do.
Yep.
What about War Pig? Do we want to move on to her?
Yeah, let's go on to War Pig.
I'll check out War Pig herself, Victoria Newland. I didn't know where I thought she had crawled under a rock or something. Apparently she did, because I think she's a professor at Columbia, isn't she?
Yeah. Did you see? Yeah, she's a co-worker of what's his name, Professor Sachs, and he does not like her.
Yeah, they are
did you see the
peers.
meme out on Telegram today where they had her morphing into a pig? That was good.
That's why I thought I'd call her War Pig. But I will be honest with you guys. I saw this. I downloaded it. I uploaded it to and shared it on my Telegram. I haven't even listened to this because I cannot stand to listen to Victoria Nuland. And I knew whatever she was going to barf out of her mouth was going to be exactly that. But anyway, let's bring her on.
Really very, very important that in this period that Europe not only be able to step up, but step up fast because as the artillery shells run out, as the air defense interceptors run out, as the ability to produce drones at scale, which have made the difference for Ukraine on the battlefield, gets harder. Europe has the capacity, not only with these proposals, but conceivably collateralizing against frozen assets that they are holding of Putin's, at least for a short time, to do more and to do it fast. The thing that's concerning me most today is the cutoff of intelligence streams from the United States. And pressure on allies like the UK not to use US intelligence for their own weapons. The primary purpose of US intelligence has been to help the Ukrainians see Russian attacks coming and have advanced warning. There are also key weapon systems that do not cue and do not hit their targets without support from US satellite cueing and the military GPS system. So people are going to die. Ukrainians are going to die, more of them, if this pause lasts significantly longer. And it is dangerous, and it's not a capability that Europe can replace with any kind of speed.
Wow, I hadn't heard that. But
Yeah.
War Pig, let me just say, War Pig admitted to U.S. involvement, and she actually said the quiet part out loud that she couldn't say while she was still at the State Department. Wow.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Kind of like Merkel running her mouth when she wasn't Chancellor of Germany. What is it with old, washed-up politicians? They have to spill the beans?
Yeah, it's like they're so happy that, now I can speak freely. Now I can tell you how evil I think. I can tell you what kind of cauldron I have in my home, where I sacrifice whatever, to Ukrainian gods and all that. It just please hold. I don't like this War Pig. But yeah, so said the quiet part out loud and confirmed, basically just like she confirmed to Marco Rubio a few years ago about the biolabs in Ukraine.
Yep. The truth comes out eventually.
Yeah. And so she's worried about the intelligence stream stopping. In fact, the intelligence stream has stopped her as well, because I believe her security clearance was yanked as well.
Yeah. Well, they've started the intelligence stream back up again. However, it came out earlier today that, I don't know if it was the Moscow attack the other day or the one the day after, was actually coordinated through French satellites to test to see if they could actually coordinate things without the United States.
Interesting.
Yeah, Murat says she doesn't see U.S. involvement as a problem. She sees it as the right thing to do. Yes, and that's the problem with people like this. This is the deep state. She saw no problem going to Ukraine in 2013 handing out cookies and $500 bills to any university student who would show up in Kiev and protest. I was there when all that started. I watched her and McCain handing out $500 bills. I have a relative who received his $500 bills to go there and protest. So
really, USAID in action, huh?
USAID in action, but all she was doing was handing out cookies. It was interesting, you know. Here's the $500 bill. Here's your cookie. But you didn't get your $500 until you got on the train and arrived in Kiev.
So you got to get to Kiev to get your $500.
Yeah. Rod says Finnish satellites per the internet. I heard French, so could be either. Who knows?
Who knows?
Not something I spent a lot of time looking into. Just something I heard. So,
hey, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say. So, where do you think we sit with this?
Well, I'm going to. Do you have a hard stop?
Yeah, about an hour and a half ago. But hey.
Well, you didn't say anything.
Keep
All right,
going. I can go another 20 minutes.
Okay, we're going to make this short. I'm trying to upload a picture, and I'm going to be very careful how we navigate this. Got to be very careful how we navigate this. But this gentleman right here is one bad dude. Well, was
overweight Banderite.
He was one bad dude because he was murdered today on the street in Odessa. And this guy, his name is Ganul. What is his last name? Demyan Ganul. And his idol, Stepan Bandera, there in the background. Anyway, he is alleged to have been involved in the 2014 Odessa massacre and the extremist unit, the Right Sector. And
he was implicated as the guy who coordinated it, wasn't he?
Yes, high level bad dude. Okay, probably protected by SBU. And I'm just going to play devil's advocate because why not? We get to do this. We get to do this.
We get to sound off.
We get to sound off, all right? You cannot tell me Russian armed forces and FSB haven't been looking for this dude for years. You cannot tell me that. Now, what just happened over the last couple of weeks? Significant in the intelligence world. And this is where we had the United States say, we're no longer going to support Ukraine with intel, but we may assist Russia with some intelligence. What if? I'm just playing. What if intel operatives went to FSB or went actually through Trump and say, hey, this for that, okay? And said, you know this guy. We know where he is. We know how you can find him. And that's it. That's it. That's all they got to say. Here's the info, and we're out. You do what you want with it. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? I think it's more probable than what most people realize. I'm just going there.
I will not disagree with you at all. And, you know, it was kind of a ballsy elimination of this guy. And this is what really kind of has what you're suggesting written all over it. The guy did away with him and then walked into the police department, gave himself up. And the police, they're going, what? We don't know that you really did it. The guy's saying, I did it.
Hey, did you? There's an interview on X where the police are interviewing. He's down on the ground and they're questioning this guy. And then there's a still photo of this guy, and look at this guy's face. He gives 0 F's. You know what I'm saying? 0 about what he did. This guy hired or picked or whatever to do this, okay? I'm just saying, this looks suspiciously like a cooperative intel or counter-intel operation. That's all I'm saying. I have no proof, no way to prove it, but what if, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, Trump says, let those Ukrainians there in Kursk, let's give them a chance. Let's give them a chance. But instead, or let me give them a chance, and I'm going to give you a gift.
Yeah.
Possible? And I think it's very probable.
Yeah. And that's pure speculation, but I agree.
Pure speculation, by the way. I have no proof. But we've seen how the deep state works. And we've seen how, and I'm not saying this is deep state. I'm just saying we've seen how intelligence operations work. And I think I'm astute enough to know and see the signs and to kind of put, from here to dot, makes sense to me.
I worked with those guys. I know how they operate. I agree. It has, I don't know, if you're sitting in your living room, it smells like crap, you probably stepped in dog crap.
Absolutely. So I suggest, don't take my word for it. Don't take Kevin's word for it. Just keep it in the back of your mind, but go do your own research and think about it. The timing of this is suspicious because they've been looking for this guy since 2014. You know it. And suddenly, gone, and in a public way.
Just all of a sudden, Putin's talking about nuances and he's open to peace, and a day later, boom, gone.
Okay, this is a big victory because this is part of, man, I hope we don't, denazification.
Echo Wolf. Yeah.
Oh, you put your pants, yeah.
It could very well be a message to those guys who do not prefer peace in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
So you too could accidentally shoot yourself in the back of the head twice.
Yeah.
Committing suicide as you fall out a 22nd floor window.
Yeah, this is if you ask me, this is a huge intel victory for Russia. Whether they claim it or not. You read the pro-Russian bloggers on X. Celebration, baby. Celebration. So just something to think about.
That old wolf. Maybe he's one of the ones that threatened the green t-shirt. The reason I put this up is because I was listening to a guy earlier today, an analyst, and he does not refer to Zelensky by name. He calls him the green t-shirt.
Yeah, and speaking of green t-shirt, and I'll just leave it after this. What do you think about President Putin showing up in Kursk region in fatigues?
I think it is a sign that he is the commander-in-chief. He does have his finger on the pulse of what's going on. My lovely wife, who notices such things, I actually noticed this too. The generals he was talking to, none of them actually had their ranks on their shoulders, nor a Russian flag on their shoulders. And I just bring this up because my wife brought this up as a piece of historical thing. She said, commanders in the field have never worn the flag or their ranks since World War II because that's how you can tell who is a commander and who gets shot first is the commander. However, I did point out to her, all the other guys wear flags on their shoulders. So you can tell who the commander is because he's the guy in green without the flag.
Without the flags, yeah.
But
yeah.
I
know. Go ahead.
I think it was a message that he is in charge, he's not afraid, and he's in control of things.
Yeah.
What do you see?
Was it a message for domestic consumption or international?
Both, maybe.
I think to boost national pride, and also I think a message for partners in the West. And speaking of derangement, Putin derangement syndrome is pretty high right now. Check out this. Joe Wilson. Who the is Joe Wilson? What state sent this guy to Congress? Woke war criminal Putin doesn't get to play the victim. He invaded a sovereign country of 40 million. His forces delighting in utter sadism. He cares nothing for the people of Russia, sending child soldiers and amputees to die for him. President Trump graciously offered Putin a way out of this insanity. Problem is, Putin does not want peace. He wants Ukraine. Dude, what 21-year-old college dropout wrote that? Man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Keep in mind, people, that these guys do not write their own X posts. So he cares nothing for the people of Russia, sending child soldiers and amputees to die for him. If anybody actually looks at social media, they would understand that statement actually is often applied to the other side.
Yeah, it's total projection. Projection.
I know guys who have been wounded, amputees who have been wounded on the front. They are brought back. They are rehabilitated, but they do not sit around crying over spilt milk. They tend to wipe it up with their shirt and hit the ground running again. It's that old thing of when you fall off the horse, get up and get back on.
I used to think that these representatives had their own social media staff. I actually want to think that the Democratic Party and some rhinos, they contract that out to private PR firms. They have to, because these private PR firms sometimes know very little about whatever they're speaking about, especially like comments like this, that it's like, okay, what can I say today? What inflammatory language can I use? Oh, this is what I'll use. She cares nothing for the Russian people, sending child soldiers and amputees. Okay, it's probably a private PR firm. I'm almost sure of it.
Yeah, who hired some kid that lives in his mother's basement to
remote work,
promote stuff for them. Yeah,
it's remote work.
I don't know.
That's all I've got. I'm just going to make one quick statement before we leave. If you have not subscribed to the Sounding Off Podcast YouTube channel, you'll find the links down below. Please do so, because you've only got 2 weeks. 2 more weeks. March 23rd will be the last Sounding Off Podcast live streamed on the Moscow Photographer channel. From then on, even when we do like with Kevin, it's all going to be on Sounding Off Podcast. Please go over there. Same thing with Kevin, right?
Yeah.
Where are you? This way.
Hey, I'm over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Hey, today I've got it. This is you. This is me.
There we go, like that. So,
If you
yeah,
find both of us, you're sure to get it.
InfoWars Press YouTube channel. Go sign up there as well. Thank you all for the support. We will have a Sunday night live on Sounding Out Podcast. Also, Moscow Photographer channel and Sounding Out Podcast, 8 p.m. And maybe we'll figure out what Zelensky's going to do by then.
Yeah. Hey, as a last comment, they seem to run out their supply of drones after that 300 and some odd on Moscow. They're down to, 15, 20 a day now again.
Yeah, with no resupply. Hopefully.
Yep. All right, everybody. I will see you tomorrow night. I have some things to talk about on, like moving money and immigration and stuff, because they've been building up for a few weeks. And we'll join you back here on 4 of our channels on Sunday with Eddie again.
You got it. Hey guys, enjoy your Friday. We'll see you later.
Yep. До свидания.
Пока.
С чего начинается Родина? С окошек, горящих вдали, со старой отцовской буденовки, что где-то в шкафу мы нашли. А может, она начинается со стука вагонных колес и с клятвы, которую в юности ты ей в своем сердце принес. С чего начинается род?